A single leaf had fallen into the courtyard. No one had seen it fall. It had simply been part of the tree, and then, sometime during the quiet passage from afternoon into evening, it had become part of the earth. A young monk found it there while closing the wooden shutters before night. The leaf was brown at the edges and golden near its center. A little rain had gathered in its curved surface, forming a clear pool no wider than a fingertip. The monk bent down. For a moment, he thought of placing the leaf back upon the tree. It was an impossible thought, of course. He knew this. Yet something in him wished to undo the falling. Something in him wanted the branch to be as it had been that morning. Full, unchanged, holding everything it had once held. An old teacher was passing through the courtyard and noticed the young monk crouching beside the leaf. "What are you looking at?" the teacher asked. "Something that is gone," the monk said. The teacher looked toward the tree, then toward the leaf resting on the wet stones. "Is it gone?" he asked, and then he continued walking. Perhaps you know the feeling hidden inside that small question. You look at something that has changed, and you call it gone. A season has ended. A person has left. A plan has not unfolded as you hoped. A familiar version of your life has quietly disappeared, and the mind reaches backward. It remembers the branch before the leaf fell. It remembers the room before someone walked out of it. It remembers the body before it changed, the friendship before it became distant, the home before it became only a place in memory. The mind says, "That was mine." The mind says, "That was me." The mind says, "Without it, what remains?" These are not strange thoughts. They are not signs that you have failed to understand life. They are among the oldest thoughts a human being can have. For as long as people have loved, they have feared losing what they love. For as long as people have built homes, they have known that homes do not remain forever. For as long as people have looked into still water, they have watched the reflection change. So there is nothing wrong with you if letting go feels difficult. There is nothing wrong with you if change sometimes feels like a hand reaching into your life and carrying something away. You are not weak because you miss what was. You are human. And tonight, you do not have to stop being human. You do not have to become perfectly peaceful. You do not have to force yourself to accept anything before you are ready. You may simply rest here for a while. Let the day loosen around you. Let the hours that have already passed remain where they are. Feel the place beneath your body holding your weight without asking you to explain anything. Perhaps take one slow breath, not a special breath, not a perfect breath, only the next breath arriving on its own. And as it leaves, you might allow one small piece of effort to leave with it. There is nowhere else you must be for these few quiet moments. Nothing must be solved. Nothing must be understood all at once. We are simply sitting together beside the fallen leaf, wondering what remains when everything we tried to hold begins to fall away. The teachings of the Buddha often begin with a simple observation: everything changes. At first, this can sound almost too simple. Of course everything changes. We know this. We watch daylight cross the room. We watch tea grow cold. We see children grow taller and elders move more slowly. We know that clouds do not remain in the same shape and that a flower cannot keep its petals forever. Yet there is a difference between knowing change as an idea and meeting change in the heart. The mind can say, everything changes. The heart may still whisper, but not this person, not this home, not this dream, not the way I thought my life would be. And so, the teaching is not given to scold the heart. It is given to hold the heart gently. It says, yes, this too. And because this too changes, you do not have to carry it forever. The sorrow changes, the fear changes, the long night changes. Even the part of you that cannot imagine feeling differently will one day feel differently. Change is not only the thing that takes. Change is also the thing that opens the clenched hand. It moves the storm. It turns winter. It brings morning to a person who believed the darkness had forgotten how to end. There is a story sometimes told about a woman who lived beside a wide river. She had spent many years tending a small garden behind her house. There were herbs near the kitchen door, beans growing along wooden poles, and a pear tree planted when her child was very young. The garden had grown slowly. The woman knew every part of it. She knew where the soil remained damp after rain. She knew which corner received the first sunlight. She knew which plants leaned toward one another and which needed more room. Her hands had shaped the paths. Her feet had worn them smooth. One spring, the river rose higher than anyone in the village remembered. The water entered the lower fields first. Then it reached the road. Then, during one long night of rain, it entered the woman's garden. By morning, the herbs were buried beneath mud. The poles had fallen. The pear tree stood crooked, its roots exposed. The woman walked through the garden in silence. She lifted a broken branch. She touched the leaves pressed flat against the wet ground. For many days, she could not bring herself to begin again. A neighbor came to help, but the woman sent him home. "There is nothing left," she said. The neighbor looked at the mud, the fallen poles, and the wounded tree. Then he looked at the woman. He did not tell her to be grateful. He did not tell her that other people had lost more. He did not tell her that everything happened for a reason. He only sat beside her on the step. After some time, he picked up a small clay cup that had been carried from the kitchen by the floodwater. The cup was chipped, but unbroken. He washed it in a bucket and placed it between them. "Would you like some tea?" he asked. The woman began to cry. Not because of the cup, not because of the tea. She cried because someone had allowed the garden to be gone. Someone had sat beside her without trying to repair her sorrow before she had fully felt it. The next morning, the neighbor returned with tea. They sat again. On the third morning, the woman noticed a green shoot rising through the mud near the kitchen door. She did not smile, not yet, but she touched it gently. Several days later, she lifted one of the fallen poles and pushed it back into the soil. The garden did not return to what it had been. The pear tree never stood quite straight again. Some of the plants were lost. Others returned in places where the woman had never planted them. Seeds had traveled in the flood. By the end of summer, flowers appeared near the old path, wild and unexpected. The woman's garden was no longer the garden she remembered, but it was a garden, and she was still the one who walked through it each morning. This story does not say that loss is secretly pleasant. It does not ask us to pretend that a flood is a gift. The woman loved what had been there. She was allowed to grieve it. The teaching is quieter than that. What falls away does not take everything with it. When the garden disappeared, the woman's care remained. Her knowledge remained. The tenderness in her hands remained. The neighbor's companionship remained. The earth remained beneath the mud. And somewhere under what appeared ruined, a small green shoot was already moving toward the light. Sometimes, when something leaves your life, the first thing you notice is the empty place. The chair no longer occupied. The familiar voice no longer heard. The work no longer yours. The future no longer arranged in the way you had imagined. The empty place can seem larger than everything around it. It draws the eye. It draws the mind. But emptiness is not the same as nothingness. An empty bowl is not useless. Because it is empty, it can receive. An empty room is not gone. Because it is empty, footsteps can enter. A pause in music is not the absence of music. It gives the next note somewhere to arrive. This does not mean you must fill every empty place. Some spaces need to remain open for a while. Some losses need silence around them. But perhaps tonight you can hold the possibility that an empty place is not proof that nothing remains. You remain. The breath remains. The quiet remains. The capacity to begin again remains. Even if beginning again is not something you wish to do tonight, you do not need to rebuild the whole garden. You may simply sit beside it. You may hold the chipped cup. You may notice one green shoot. That is enough. For now, allow the weight of your body to settle a little more deeply. Perhaps the jaw can loosen without being told. Perhaps the shoulders can lower by the smallest amount. There is no need to search for the green shoot. There is no need to find hope. Let hope rest too. We can continue without asking anything from you. Long ago, in a small monastery at the edge of a forest, there lived a student who was deeply troubled by a cracked bowl. It was not a valuable bowl. It had been shaped from plain clay and fired in a village kiln. The glaze was uneven. One side was slightly thicker than the other, but the bowl had belonged to the student's teacher. Every morning, the teacher drank warm water from it before sunrise. Every evening, he washed it and placed it carefully beside a small lamp. When the old teacher died, the bowl was given to the student. For many years, the student treated it with great care. He wrapped it in cloth when he traveled. He kept it on a high shelf where no one would knock it over. He never allowed the younger monks to use it. Then one winter morning, while reaching for the bowl, his sleeve caught the edge of the shelf. The bowl fell. It struck the floor and broke into 3 pieces. The student remained still for a long time. Then he gathered the pieces and carried them to the oldest monk in the monastery. "I have lost him again," the student said. The old monk turned the broken pieces over in his hands. "You believe your teacher was inside this bowl?" he asked. "No," said the student, "but it was all I had left." The old monk looked at him kindly. "All?" The student lowered his eyes. The old monk placed one piece of the bowl in the student's palm. "What did your teacher teach you?" "To sit quietly," the student said, "and to speak carefully, and to meet anger without becoming anger." The old monk nodded. "Then perhaps the bowl did not contain your teacher." "Perhaps you do." The student began to cry. The old monk did not stop him. When the tears had quieted, he gathered the pieces of the bowl. A potter in the village repaired them, leaving the cracks visible. The bowl could no longer be used for drinking, so the student placed a small candle inside it. Each evening, light shone through the cracks. People who passed the room often thought it was beautiful. The student did too, but he never said the bowl was better because it had broken. He only understood that its breaking had not erased what it meant. This is an important difference. We sometimes rush to turn pain into a lesson. We try to prove that every broken thing becomes more beautiful. But some things are simply broken. Some relationships do not return. Some opportunities truly pass. Some changes leave a mark that does not disappear. Buddhist wisdom does not require us to deny this. It asks us to look more closely. When the form breaks, what was carried by the form may still remain. The bowl was not the teacher. The photograph is not the person. The house is not the years lived within it. The letter is not the love. The body is not the whole of a life. Forms matter. We touch them. We cherish them. We grieve when they are gone, yet they are vessels. And sometimes, when a vessel breaks, we discover that what it carried has already entered us. Perhaps there is something you have been afraid of losing because it seems to hold a part of you. A role, a title, a place where you were once needed, a way of looking, a way of being seen, a relationship that told you who you were. It is natural to hold these things carefully, but perhaps they are not the only place where your life exists. The work may end, but the patience you learned remains. The home may be sold, but the way you created warmth remains. The child may grow and need you differently, but the love does not vanish. The friendship may change, but the kindness exchanged within it has already shaped both lives. Even a dream that never came true may leave behind courage, skill, tenderness, and a deeper understanding of what matters. Nothing remains exactly as it was, but not everything disappears. The teacher remains in the student's careful words. The garden remains in the hands that learned to tend it. The river remains in the soil it changed, and you remain in ways you may not yet be able to see. There is a phrase in Buddhist teaching that is sometimes translated as non-attachment. The words can sound cold. They can sound like we are being asked not to care, not to love, not to hold anyone close. But this is not what the teaching means. Non-attachment is not the refusal to love. It is love without closing the fist. It is allowing the flower to be a flower, rather than demanding that it never lose a petal. It is holding the bowl gently because we understand that it can break. It is not indifference. It is intimacy without ownership. And perhaps this is one of the hardest things a human heart can learn, because when we love something, we want to keep it safe. We want to say, stay as you are, stay where I can find you, stay long enough that I will never have to feel the space you leave behind. But love cannot make this promise. No one can. So the teaching does not ask you to love less. It invites you to love more honestly, to look at what is precious and say, you are here now, to feel the warmth of a hand, and know that the warmth is real because it is here, not because it will remain forever. To notice the moon reflected in the pond without trying to lift the reflection from the water and carry it home. There is an old story about a traveler who crossed a mountain path, carrying a beautiful glass lantern. The lantern had been given to him by his mother when he left his village. It was made of thin blue glass, and when a candle burned inside it, small patterns of light appeared on the ground. The traveler protected the lantern through many seasons. He wrapped it in wool when the path was rough. He held it against his chest when the wind was strong. At night, it lit his way. One evening he came to a narrow bridge above a shallow stream. The stones were wet. His foot slipped. The traveler caught himself, but the lantern struck the railing and shattered. The candle fell into the water and went out. The traveler sat beside the bridge in darkness. He was far from the nearest village. Clouds covered the moon. He felt not only lost, but betrayed. He had protected the lantern for so long. He had believed that as long as he carried it, some part of home traveled with him. Now the pieces lay among the stones. After a while, an old woman approached from the opposite direction. She was carrying a bundle of firewood. Seeing the traveler, she asked why he was sitting in the cold. "My light is gone," he said. The woman placed the bundle on the ground. She looked at the broken glass. Then she looked toward the darkness beyond the bridge. "Your lantern is gone," she said. "That is what I said." "No," the woman replied. "You said your light is gone." The traveler did not understand. The woman took 2 dry sticks from the center of her bundle. She gathered grass from beneath an overhanging stone and made a small fire. The traveler warmed his hands. When the clouds began to move, faint moonlight appeared along the path. The woman gave him one burning branch. "This will not last forever either," she said. The traveler almost laughed. "No," he answered. "I suppose it will not." He walked with the branch until the path widened. By then, the moon had emerged. He no longer needed the flame. For many years afterward, the traveler remembered the blue lantern. He missed the patterns it had cast on the ground. He did not replace it. But when he met others sitting in darkness, he often shared whatever light he had. The lantern fell away. The light continued. Perhaps you have carried something through your life, believing it was the source of your safety, a person's approval, a certain amount of money, a routine, a belief about how the future would unfold, a body that behaved in familiar ways, a place in the world that seemed secure. When such things change, it can feel as though the light itself has disappeared, and sometimes, for a while, everything truly does look dark. There is no need to pretend otherwise. Yet the old woman's words may be worth carrying. The lantern is not the light. The form of safety is not safety itself. The form of love is not love itself. The form of peace is not peace itself. Peace sometimes arrives through things we can touch: a quiet room, a familiar voice, a steady income, a warm bed. These things matter, but the deepest peace is not located entirely inside them. If it were, peace would break each time the lantern broke. Perhaps peace is also the ability to sit beside the broken glass without abandoning yourself. Perhaps it is the small fire made from what is available. Perhaps it is the moon emerging slowly after the clouds move. You do not have to see the whole path tonight. You do not have to find a new lantern. Perhaps there is only enough light for the next few steps. That is still light. The next breath, the softness of the pillow, the quiet sound beyond the room. The simple knowledge that you are here. Carry only that much. Let the rest of the path remain unseen. Feel how the night asks nothing from the trees outside. They do not have to know when dawn will come. They stand in darkness and allow darkness to be part of the night. You may do the same. Take one gentle breath and let it leave without following it. When you are ready, we will go on together. A fisherman once lived in a village beside a quiet bay. He owned a small wooden boat that had belonged to his father and his father before him. The boat was old, the boards creaked. Water entered through the seams, and each morning the fisherman emptied it with a tin cup before setting out. People in the village often told him to replace it, but the fisherman would pat the worn side and say, "This boat knows the way." Then came a winter of strong storms. For many days, no one went onto the water. When the weather cleared, the fisherman found his boat broken against the rocks. The mast was gone. The hull had split. Several boards had drifted away. He stood on the shore until the cold reached through his coat. The next morning, he returned with rope and tools. He carried the broken pieces to his shed. He tried to repair the boat, but the damage was too great. A boat builder from another village examined it. "This cannot return to the sea," she said. The fisherman was angry. "You do not know this boat." "I know wood," the builder replied, "and I know when wood has finished one task." The fisherman turned away. For several weeks, he did nothing with the broken boat. Then one afternoon, his granddaughter came into the shed. She climbed onto one of the wide boards and pretended to row. The fisherman watched her. The next day, he used 2 boards to make a bench outside his house. With another, he repaired the garden gate. He shaped a small stool for his granddaughter. He carved a spoon. He placed a curved piece of the old hull above the doorway, where it caught the evening light. Years passed. The fisherman eventually sailed in another boat. It was lighter and quieter. It did not know the way, so he learned the way again. When people visited his home, they sat on the bench made from the old boat. They opened the gate. They ate soup with wooden spoons. The boat no longer crossed the bay, yet it had not become useless. It had finished one form of service and entered another. The fisherman had believed the boat could only be honored by remaining a boat, but the wood did not insist upon this. The wood was willing to become a bench, a gate, a stool beneath a child's feet. This is one of the quiet gifts of impermanence. Forms end, but life continues to rearrange itself. What was once one thing becomes another. A tree becomes a table. A flower becomes seed. A difficult year becomes understanding. A failure becomes humility. A season of caring for someone becomes a gentleness you carry towards strangers. A role you can no longer perform becomes wisdom you offer differently. We suffer when we believe that usefulness has only one shape. We think, if I cannot be what I was, I am nothing. If I cannot work as I worked, I have no value. If I am no longer needed in the same way, I am not needed. If the dream changes, the whole journey was wasted. But the old boat points towards something softer. You may have finished one task. That does not mean you are finished. A person may spend many years rowing across a bay and later become a place where someone rests. A voice that once led may later comfort. Hands that once built may later bless. A heart that once held one particular love may become more spacious because of both the holding and the losing. This is not a demand that you reinvent yourself. You do not have to turn every broken board into something useful before morning. The fisherman waited. He was angry. He grieved. He allowed the boat to remain broken in the shed. Transformation cannot be hurried. A seed beneath the soil does not need to be reminded to open. Winter does not need advice about becoming spring. When the time is right, life knows how to move. Tonight, perhaps you may release the thought that you must already know what comes next. You do not. The old form may be ending. The new form may not yet be visible. Between them is a quiet place. Buddhist teachings sometimes call this uncertainty. But uncertainty is not only danger, it is also space. It is the open doorway between what has been and what has not yet arrived. The mind dislikes this doorway. It wants to close it quickly. It wants a plan, a name, a promise. Yet perhaps you can stand there for a moment without forcing the next room to reveal itself. You are not lost simply because the old boat can no longer sail. You may only be learning what else the wood can become. Let this thought rest lightly. No need to believe it. No need to remember it. Simply let it sit nearby, like a bench outside a quiet house. And for a few moments, feel the support beneath you. You are being held, not forever, not by something you must grasp. Held now, and now is enough. In a village surrounded by fields, there lived a potter who was known for making simple bowls. She did not decorate them with elaborate patterns. She used earth-colored clay and a clear glaze. People liked her bowls because they felt balanced in the hands. One summer, a long dry season hardened the clay near the village. The potter dug deeper, but the earth she found was coarse and filled with small stones. When she shaped it, the bowls cracked. When she fired them, some collapsed. The potter became frustrated. She had made bowls since childhood. Her hands knew what to do. Yet suddenly, the clay would not obey. A wandering monk came to the village and asked for water. The potter gave him a cup. He noticed the broken bowls piled outside her workshop. "Bad clay," she said before he could ask. The monk picked up one of the cracked bowls. "Can it hold water?" he asked. No. Grain? It leaks through the cracks. Light? The potter looked at him. The monk placed the bowl over a small candle. Thin lines of light appeared through the broken places. The potter shook her head. A bowl should hold water. Perhaps, the monk said, but this one holds light. After he left, the potter remained dissatisfied. She did not suddenly become grateful for the bad clay. She continued searching for better earth. But she also began placing candles beneath some of the cracked bowls. At night, her workshop glowed. Travelers passing through the village saw the small lights and knew where they could find shelter. The potter still made bowls for water when the rains returned, but she never again threw every cracked bowl away. You may have heard stories like this before. The broken vessel that becomes a lamp, the wound that becomes an opening. Such images can be comforting, but they can also be misunderstood. Not every wound must become a gift. Not every loss must serve others. You do not owe the world beauty made from your pain. You are allowed to heal quietly. You are allowed to have parts of your life that remain unfinished and unexplained. The teaching is not that brokenness is always useful. It is that your worth does not depend on remaining unbroken. The bowl was not rejected by the candle. The light did not say, "You are too cracked to carry me." It entered through the open space. Perhaps there are places in you that you have tried to hide, places where confidence fell away, places where trust was damaged, places where the life you expected did not fit the life that arrived. You may look at these places and think they disqualify you from peace. You may believe peace belongs to people whose bowls are whole, people who made better choices, people who have not lost what you lost, people who do not wake in the night remembering. But peace is not water that requires a perfect vessel. It is more like light. It can enter through openings. Sometimes the opening is simply the moment when you stop insisting that you must be different before you deserve rest. You are not a problem waiting to be repaired. You are a living being moving through change. You have carried what you could. You have broken where the weight was too much. You have continued, and here you are, breathing, listening, held by the quiet. Perhaps tonight, the cracks do not need to be sealed. Perhaps they can remain as they are. Nothing is leaking away that you need to chase. Nothing must be hidden. Let the breath move through the body as light moves through an open window. No effort, no achievement, only space. There is another story about an old gardener and a wall. The gardener had spent many years growing vines along the eastern wall of a monastery. Every spring, small white flowers covered the stones. Bees visited in the morning. In the heat of the afternoon, the leaves made a cool green shade. One winter, part of the wall collapsed. The vines fell with it. The monks gathered the stones and planned to rebuild. The gardener stopped them. "Not yet," he said. So the stones remained scattered. Through the spring, the gardener watched the broken wall. Without its shade, sunlight reached a patch of earth that had always been dark. Seeds that had slept there for many years began to grow. Blue flowers appeared, then grasses, then a small fig tree that had taken root between two stones. The monks asked whether they should remove the new growth and rebuild the wall. The gardener considered this. Finally, he said, "Build the wall farther back." The new wall was shorter. The old vines did not return in the same way, but the blue flowers remained, and the fig tree grew. Visitors sometimes rested beneath it. One day, a young monk asked the gardener whether he was glad the wall had fallen. "No," the gardener replied. "I loved the wall." "Then why did you not rebuild it as it was?" "Because I loved the garden too." The gardener did not betray the old wall by making room for what appeared after it fell. He allowed grief and curiosity to exist together. This is a gentle form of wisdom. We often believe loyalty to the past requires us to refuse the present. If we begin to laugh again, perhaps the loss did not matter. If we love again, perhaps the first love was not real. If we enjoy the new home, perhaps we have abandoned the old one. If we discover freedom after a difficult ending, perhaps we are denying the pain. But the heart can contain more than one truth. You can miss what was and still receive what is. You can love the wall and the flowers that grow in the sunlight after it falls. You can honor the life you expected while slowly meeting the life that came. You can carry sorrow and gratitude without asking one to defeat the other. This is not confusion, it is spaciousness. The Buddha taught what is sometimes called the middle way. We often hear this as a path between extremes, not clinging too tightly, not pushing away, not drowning in an experience, not pretending the experience is not there. The middle way is not always a perfect balance. It may simply be the willingness to let two truths sit beside one another. This hurts, and I am still here. I did not want this, and something new is growing. I miss them, and I am allowed to feel warmth again. The wall fell. The garden continues. Perhaps you have been guarding an empty place because you fear that new growth would erase what stood there. But nothing can erase what has already shaped you. The wall existed. The vines flowered. The bees came each spring. The shade was real. New sunlight does not make the old shade less real. It simply belongs to another season. You do not have to invite the new season tonight. You may still be sitting among the stones. But perhaps you can allow the smallest opening in the thought that life must look exactly as it once did in order to be meaningful. Meaning is not so fragile. Love is not so easily erased. The past does not disappear because the present continues. It becomes part of the ground, and from that ground, things grow that do not need to resemble what came before. For now, notice the darkness around you. It does not erase the room. It softens its edges. It allows objects to rest without being examined. Perhaps your thoughts can become like that, still present, but less sharply outlined. You do not have to inspect each one. Let them rest in the dark. There is nothing you need to rebuild before sleep. A young seeker once visited a hermit who lived near the top of a hill. The seeker had lost nearly everything he believed made his life meaningful. His work had ended. A close friendship had broken. The house where he had grown up had been sold. He climbed the hill carrying a heavy pack filled with objects from his past. There were old letters, a wooden tool from his father, a small blanket from childhood, a stone taken from the garden of the old house. When the seeker reached the hermit's hut, he placed the pack on the floor. "I do not know who I am anymore," he said. The hermit poured tea into 2 cups. "Who were you before?" he asked. "I was a builder." "Are your hands gone?" "No, I was a friend." "Is your capacity for friendship gone?" The seeker hesitated. "I lived in my family's house." "Were you the house?" "No." The hermit nodded toward the pack. "And all this, it is what remains." The hermit lifted the pack. It was very heavy. He carried it outside and began walking down the hill. The seeker followed in alarm. "Where are you taking it?" "To the river. You cannot throw it away." The hermit stopped. "Then carry it." The seeker took the pack. They continued down the hill. After a while, the seeker became tired. They rested beneath a tree. The hermit asked him to open the pack. One by one, they removed the objects. The letters were read. The wooden tool was held. The blanket was unfolded. The stone was placed in the seeker's palm. The hermit did not tell him to discard them. Instead, he asked what each object carried. "My father's patience," said the seeker, holding the tool. "Where is that patience now?" "In me, perhaps." "The blanket? My mother made it when I was small. Where is her care?" The seeker placed a hand over his heart. "The stone? It reminds me of home." "What was home?" The seeker closed his eyes. "The smell of bread, a lamp in the evening, being known." "Can any of those exist again?" "Not in the same way." "Must they exist in the same way?" The seeker did not answer. When they reached the river, the hermit sat on the bank. The seeker removed the pack from his shoulders. He did not throw it away, but he took the stone and placed it beside the water. He folded the blanket and kept it. He carried the wooden tool back to the hut. The letters remained in the pack, which was now lighter. Years later, the seeker still owned some of those objects, but he no longer believed they were the only proof that his life had happened. He began to understand that identity is not a fixed house. It is more like a river. It continues, but never in exactly the same form. The water that passed yesterday is not the water passing now, and still, we call it the river. You are like this. Your body has changed. Your thoughts have changed. Your roles have changed. The things you desire now may not be the things you desired years ago. You have lost versions of yourself without holding a funeral for them. The child you were is gone, yet not absent. The younger face is gone, yet not meaningless. The person who knew less, feared differently, hoped differently, still moves quietly within the person listening now. What remains when everything falls away? Perhaps not a single fixed self. Perhaps something more alive. Awareness. The capacity to meet this moment. The quiet witness that notices thoughts arriving and departing. Buddhist teachings often speak of no fixed self. This can sound unsettling. The mind may hear, "You do not exist." But that is not what is being said. The teaching points toward freedom. You are not trapped inside one description. You are not only your work. You are not only your history. You are not only the worst thing that happened to you. You are not only the person others believed you to be. You are not even only the story you currently tell about yourself. Stories change. Names change. Roles change. The river continues. Perhaps you have been trying to hold yourself together by holding tightly to an old identity. The capable one, the needed one, the successful one, the calm one, the person who never asks for help, the person who keeps everyone else from falling apart. These identities may have served you. They may have helped you survive, but you are larger than the role, and when the role becomes too heavy, you are allowed to set down the pack. You do not have to throw everything into the river. You may keep the blanket. You may keep the letter. You may keep the memory. Letting go does not always mean discarding. Sometimes it means carrying differently. Holding an object without asking it to hold your whole identity. Remembering a person without asking the memory to become a doorway back in time. Honoring the past without living entirely inside it. Carry this with you tonight. You are not required to know who you are in one complete sentence. Perhaps no living thing can be contained in a sentence. You may simply be the river passing here. This breath, this awareness, this quiet presence beneath the changing forms. Let the pack rest beside you. Nothing inside it will disappear while you sleep. You can decide what to carry another day. For now, your hands may open. Your shoulders may soften. The hill can wait. The river can flow without your guidance. There was once a king who asked a group of wise people to create a message that would help him in every circumstance. He wanted something he could read when he was joyful, and something he could read when he was grieving. Something for victory, something for disappointment, something for abundance, something for loss. The wise people spent many days considering the request. At last, they wrote a few words on a small piece of paper and placed it inside a ring. They told the king to open it only when he truly needed guidance. Years later, the kingdom entered a difficult season. Plans failed. People the king trusted left his side. He sat alone in a quiet room, feeling that everything he had built was falling away. He opened the ring. The message said, "This too is passing." The king felt some relief, not because the pain vanished, but because the words placed the pain inside movement. This too. Not only joy, not only sorrow, not only praise, not only blame, everything passing. Later, when the kingdom recovered and the king was celebrated, he opened the ring again. This too is passing. The message did not ruin his happiness. It made the happiness tender. It helped him receive the moment without trying to imprison it. This story appears in many forms. Its wisdom is simple, so simple that the mind may overlook it. This too is passing. The phrase does not mean this does not matter. A sunset passes, and it matters. A conversation passes, and it matters. A life passes, and it matters. Impermanence does not remove meaning. It creates intimacy. Because the moment will not remain, we are invited to meet it, to be here while it is here, to listen while the voice is speaking, to feel the warmth while the hand is near, to notice the breath while it is moving through the body. When everything feels as though it is falling away, the mind often rushes ahead. It imagines the final emptiness. It says, "Soon there will be nothing." But this too is passing does not point toward nothing. It points toward the next moment, and then the next. Life does not fall away all at once. It changes shape moment by moment. Even now, while you rest, the body is quietly renewing itself. Breath enters, breath leaves. The heart contracts and releases. Thoughts form and dissolve. The night deepens. Then, without effort, it begins moving toward morning. You do not make this happen. There is relief in that. You do not carry time forward. Time carries you. Perhaps something difficult is moving through your life now. You may not know when it will change. You may not know what comes after. The phrase "this too is passing" is not a promise that everything will soon become easy. It is a reminder that no experience is the whole sky. Fear is weather. Grief is weather. Confusion is weather. Even happiness is weather. The sky does not cling to clear days or resist the rain. It allows each form to arrive and leave. In Buddhist teaching, awareness is sometimes compared to this open sky. Thoughts are clouds, feelings are storms, memories are changing light. The sky is not damaged by weather. This does not mean you should feel untouched. You are not being asked to become distant from your life. It means that somewhere within experience, there may be a spaciousness wider than the current storm. You may not feel that spaciousness. That is all right. It does not require your belief. When clouds cover the whole sky, the sky has not vanished. When thoughts fill the mind, awareness is still there, quietly knowing that thoughts are present. When grief fills the heart, some small part of you knows grief is here. That knowing is not grief. It makes room for grief. Perhaps that is what remains. Not a cold observer, not something separate from the human heart, a quiet openness in which the heart can break and mend, love and lose, fear and rest, an openness that does not have to solve the weather. It simply allows the weather to move. Imagine the next thought as a small cloud. No need to stop it, no need to follow it. You might silently say, passing. The next feeling, passing. The next sound, passing. The breath itself, passing. Not disappearing into nothing, moving into what comes next. There is a story of a nun who lived for many years in a mountain temple. She was known for caring for the lamps. Each evening, she walked through the halls with a small flame, lighting one lamp after another. One night, a strong wind entered through an open door and extinguished nearly every lamp. The younger students rushed to close the door. They were upset. "We spent so long lighting them," one said. The nun sheltered the small flame in her hands. "Yes," she replied. "Now we must begin again." The student expected her to be frustrated. Instead, the nun smiled. "Was the first lighting wasted?" she asked. The student looked down the dark hallway. "The lamps are out. But while they burned, did they give light?" "Yes." Then they completed their work. Together, they lit the lamps again. The first flames had ended. Their ending did not make their light meaningless. How often do we believe that something was wasted because it did not last? A relationship ended, so perhaps it was a mistake. A project failed, so perhaps the effort meant nothing. A peaceful period passed, so perhaps the peace was not real. A person died, so perhaps love has only led to pain. But duration is not the measure of meaning. A lamp may burn for 1 hour and still light the room. A kind word may last only a moment and still change the direction of a day. A friendship may belong to one season and still teach the heart how to trust. A place may be home for a short time and still offer shelter. Even a brief moment of peace matters. It does not need to continue forever to be true. Perhaps you have had good things fall away, and part of your suffering comes from believing their ending has taken their goodness with it. But what was given was given. The lamp did shine. You were warmed. You were seen. You loved. You learned. The fact that the moment passed does not reach backward and erase the light. This may be worth remembering when the mind says, "What was the point?" The point was the light while it burned. The point was the hand while it held yours. The point was the laughter while it moved through the room. The point was life while it was alive in that particular form. We do not need to demand eternity from every beautiful thing. This demand exhausts the heart. Let the lamp be a lamp. Let the evening be an evening. Let a person be a person, changing and unfinished. Let yourself be alive without requiring yourself to remain the same. And when the wind comes, as wind comes, perhaps you can protect one small flame in your hands. Not every lamp, not the whole hallway. One flame. The next act of kindness, the next meal, the next hour of rest, the next time you speak gently to yourself. From one flame, many lamps can be lit again. And even when you do not feel capable of relighting them, darkness is not failure. The room rests in darkness. The wick waits. The flame can return when it returns. Take a quiet moment here. Feel the natural rising of the breath. Feel its release. No need to make the inhale deeper than it wishes to be. No need to keep the exhale. The breath teaches without words, arriving, leaving, nothing held, nothing lost, only life moving. In an old village, two sisters inherited a house from their grandmother. The house stood beside a field of tall grass. Its roof was low, and its windows were small. The sisters had spent many childhood summers there. They remembered bread cooling on the kitchen table, rain tapping against the shutters, and their grandmother humming while she swept the floor. When the grandmother died, the sisters began arguing about what should happen to the house. The older sister wanted to preserve everything. She did not want the chairs moved. She did not want the curtains replaced. She became angry when dust was disturbed on the shelves. The younger sister wanted to repair the roof, open the rooms, and invite people to stay. "You are erasing her," the older sister said. "You are turning her home into a tomb," the younger replied. For months, they could not agree. Then one autumn evening, a storm damaged the roof. Rain entered the kitchen. The sisters hurried to save what they could. They moved the table. They carried the chairs into the dry room. They removed the curtains. As they worked, a small box fell from a shelf. Inside were several notes written by their grandmother. Most were ordinary reminders. Buy flour. Mend the blue coat. Leave soup for the neighbor. One note said, "A house stays alive when someone opens the door." The sisters sat together on the floor. They did not know whether their grandmother had meant anything beyond the simple instruction. Perhaps she had been reminding herself to welcome someone. Perhaps the words were never intended for them. Yet the sentence softened something. The sisters repaired the roof. They kept the old table. They replaced the damaged curtains. They moved some of the chairs and left others where they had always been. In time, travelers began staying in the extra room. Children played in the field. The house changed, and in changing, it continued to carry the grandmother's warmth. The older sister had believed memory required stillness. The younger had believed life required change. Both were partly right. Memory needs something to hold. Life needs room to move. We often struggle because we think we must choose between keeping and releasing. But perhaps there is another way. We can keep the essence and release the form. We can keep the warmth and move the chair. We can keep the teaching and let the bowl break. We can keep the love and allow the relationship to change. We can keep the gratitude and still close the door behind a chapter that has ended. This does not mean we always know what to preserve. Sometimes we keep too much because we are afraid. Sometimes we release too quickly because remembering hurts. The middle way is discovered slowly, object by object, memory by memory, day by day. You may not know what to do with the house of your past. Some rooms may still be closed. Some may be leaking rain. You do not need to renovate everything tonight. Perhaps you can simply find the note on the floor. A house stays alive when someone opens the door. What is the door? Maybe it is the willingness to let life touch you again. Maybe it is the willingness to receive care. Maybe it is allowing one new possibility to enter without demanding that it replace what has been lost. New love does not replace old love. New joy does not cancel old sorrow. A new home does not erase the rooms where you once lived. The heart is not a small house with space for only one season. It is wider than that. It can contain the sound of your grandmother humming and the footsteps of children who have not yet arrived. It can contain the empty chair and the person who sits nearby. It can contain all of this without needing to make it neat. Perhaps this is why Buddhist teachings speak so often about compassion. Compassion does not demand that experience be neat. It sits on the wet kitchen floor. It helps move the table. It does not argue with the rain. Compassion says, "Of course this is difficult. Of course part of you wants everything to remain untouched. Of course another part wants to open every window. Both parts are trying to care for you. The one who clings is not your enemy. It is afraid that love will disappear. The one who wants to run is not your enemy. It is afraid the pain will never end. You can speak gently to both. Nothing must be forced. We can keep what is alive. We can release what has finished. And when we cannot tell the difference, we can wait. Waiting is also a path. The house does not mind if you sit quietly in the doorway. The field continues moving in the wind. An old teacher once asked a student to carry a cup filled completely with water across the temple courtyard. "Do not spill a drop," the teacher said. The student walked very slowly. His eyes remained fixed on the cup. He did not notice the birds. He did not notice the sunlight on the stones. He did not greet anyone he passed. When he reached the other side, the teacher asked, "What did you see?" "The water," said the student. The teacher poured half of it onto the ground. "Now walk back." The student returned more easily. He saw the tree in the center of the courtyard. He heard someone laughing in the kitchen. A breeze touched his face. When he reached the teacher, a few drops of water had spilled. The student apologized. The teacher shook his head. The cup was too full. Many of us move through life like the student on the first journey. The cup is filled to the edge. Responsibilities, memories, plans, regrets, objects, expectations, the image of who we must be, the fear of what will happen if anything is lost. We walk carefully, watching the surface of the water. We become afraid of every small movement. We believe peace means reaching the other side without spilling. But perhaps peace requires a little empty space, not because what you carry is unimportant, because without space, you cannot feel the wind. You cannot hear laughter. You cannot see the tree. The cup does not become worthless when some water leaves it. It becomes easier to carry. There may be things you are holding tonight that have already fallen away in reality, but remain held tightly in the mind. A conversation you keep repeating, a mistake you keep repairing in imagination, a future you keep trying to force back into its former shape, a judgment someone made about you long ago, a promise that was broken. The mind carries these things because it hopes carrying will change them. It believes vigilance can prevent the past from having happened, but the cup grows heavy. You do not need to pour everything out, perhaps only one small amount, one sentence, one blame, one demand that you should have known what you could not have known. You might say, "I carried this as far as I could." You might say, "This is no longer happening now." You might say, "I do not have to solve the past before I am allowed to sleep." The words do not need to feel completely true. Let them be an opening, a little space above the water. There is a difference between remembering and carrying. Remembering allows the image to appear and pass. Carrying braces the body beneath it. Remembering says, "This happened." Carrying says, "I must keep it happening." Perhaps tonight, the body can put down what the mind continues to remember. The shoulders do not need to hold the old conversation. The jaw does not need to complete the argument. The hands do not need to protect what has already changed. This is not forgetting, it is resting. Even those who carry water must set down the cup. A farmer once asked a monk how he could stop grieving the passing of time. "My children are growing," he said. "My parents are aging. Every season seems shorter than the one before it. When I am happy, I already feel the happiness leaving." The monk asked the farmer to meet him in the orchard before dawn. The next morning, they stood beneath trees heavy with blossoms. The monk pointed toward one flower. "Do you wish it would remain like this?" he asked. "Yes," said the farmer. "And if it remained a blossom, would there be fruit?" "No." They walked farther. The monk picked up a fallen petal. "Has the tree lost something?" "Yes." "Has it only lost?" The farmer looked at the branches. Small green beginnings of fruit were forming where petals had fallen. "No," he said. The monk nodded. The farmer understood something, though not everything. He still felt sadness when his children grew. He still wished some evenings could last longer, but he began to see that falling away is often how life makes room for its next form. The blossom does not fail when it becomes fruit. Childhood does not fail when it ends. A season does not fail when it turns. You do not fail when you change. We sometimes grieve change because we interpret it as loss alone. The smooth face changes. The strong body slows. A child no longer reaches for our hand in the same way. Friends move into different lives. But change is also continuation. The child who no longer reaches for your hand may carry your kindness into a room you will never enter. The body that slows may notice things it once hurried past. The dream that ends may return as a different kind of devotion. The blossom falls. Fruit forms. Then fruit too falls. Seeds enter the earth. Nothing holds one shape. And still, life is not absent. Perhaps you are in a season where petals are falling. You cannot yet see the fruit. There may be only the feeling of losing what was beautiful. You do not have to call the loss beautiful. But you might remember that the tree is not empty of life, simply because the blossom is gone. Something may be forming in ways too small to notice. Or perhaps nothing new needs to form immediately. The branch can rest. Winter branches are not dead merely because they are bare. Bare is not the same as empty. This may be one of the deepest answers to the question of what remains. When everything visible falls away, the unseen capacity for life remains. A seed beneath soil looks like an ending. A sleeping tree looks still. A quiet heart may seem to have nothing left to give. But life does not always announce itself. It gathers. It waits. It moves below the surface. And even when a particular form does not return, the ground remains capable of receiving. You are not required to bloom in every season. You are not required to make meaning immediately. Perhaps your task tonight is only to be the ground, dark, quiet, unhurried, holding what has fallen. Let the fallen petals remain where they are. The earth knows what to do with them. You can rest without knowing. In a distant valley, there lived an elderly woman who was known for weaving blankets. Her blankets were warm, but never perfectly even. One edge might be wider. A line of color might bend. When people pointed this out, she would smile. The hands change while the blanket is being made, she said. As she grew older, her eyesight weakened. She could no longer weave the detailed patterns she had once made. At first, she felt ashamed. She stopped opening her workshop. The loom remained covered. One winter, a young mother came to her door, asking whether she had any blankets to sell. The woman said no. Then she noticed the child in the mother's arms shivering. She uncovered the loom. "I can no longer make the old patterns," she said. "I do not need a pattern," the mother replied. "I need warmth." The weaver began again. The blanket she made was simple. The lines wandered. The colors did not match in the way she would once have chosen. But it was warm. The mother wrapped the child in it. The weaver watched the small body become still and comfortable. She began to understand that she had confused the pattern with the purpose. The pattern was falling away. Warmth remained. There may be patterns in your life that are changing. Ways you once expressed love. Ways you once contributed. Ways you once recognized yourself. Perhaps the detailed work is no longer possible. Perhaps the hand shakes. The mind tires. The opportunity is gone. The old rhythm no longer fits. This can be painful. It is not shallow to grieve what you could once do. But sometimes, beneath the pattern, the purpose remains. You may not be able to care in the same way. You can still care. You may not be able to speak with the same certainty. You can still offer honesty. You may not be able to protect everyone you love. You can still sit beside them. You may not have answers. You can still bring warmth. This is not settling for less. Warmth is not less than pattern. Presence is not less than advice. Kindness is not less because it is simple. The ego often loves the pattern. It wants the blanket to prove skill. It wants life to look a certain way. But the heart is often asking a quieter question. Is there warmth here? When everything unnecessary falls away, what remains may be very simple. A hand held. A cup of water. A meal prepared. A truthful word. A willingness to listen. The breath. The awareness of another person's pain. The capacity not to turn away. These simple things can seem small because they are not dramatic. Yet much of life is carried by them. Villages are held together by people bringing soup. Families are held together by someone making space at the table. Lonely hearts survive because one person remembers to ask how they are. A frightened child settles because a blanket is warm. What remains is often not impressive. It does not need to be. Perhaps you have spent years building patterns, a reputation, a collection, a career, an image of success. There is nothing wrong with patterns. They can be beautiful, but they are not the warmth itself. If the pattern begins to change, perhaps you can ask what it was meant to carry. Was it meant to carry care, creativity, connection, service, joy? Those may still be available in smaller and freer forms. A life can become simpler without becoming empty. A voice can become quieter without losing truth. A room can contain fewer objects and more peace. A person can release the need to be admired and discover the relief of simply being present. Tonight, you do not need to weave anything. Let the loom be covered. Let the unfinished blanket remain unfinished. The child is warm. The room is quiet. That is enough. There is a well-known image in Buddhist teaching of a person crossing a river on a raft. The person gathers branches and ties them together. The raft carries them safely from one shore to the other. Once they reach the far bank, they are grateful. But would it make sense to lift the raft onto their shoulders and carry it through the forest? The raft was useful. It may even have saved them, but a tool for crossing water becomes a burden on dry land. This image is often used to speak about teachings and beliefs. Even helpful ideas must sometimes be released, but it can also speak about the ways we learn to survive. Perhaps you built a raft during a difficult time. You became watchful. You stopped trusting easily. You learned to need very little from others. You became productive because resting did not feel safe. You became agreeable because conflict felt dangerous. You became strong because there was no one else to carry the weight. These ways of being may have brought you across a river. They were not foolish. They were not failures. They were intelligent responses to the water you were in. But perhaps you are on another shore now, and still, the raft is on your shoulders. The mind says, do not put it down. You may need it again. So you carry vigilance into safe rooms. You carry old fear into new relationships. You carry constant effort into moments meant for rest. You carry the belief that everything will collapse unless you personally hold it together. The raft is heavy. The teaching does not tell you to throw it away in anger. It invites gratitude. Thank you for carrying me. Thank you for helping me cross. You were needed then. Perhaps you can rest now. There is a story about a soldier who left his village when he was young and returned many years later. He had learned to sleep lightly. Every sound woke him. He always sat facing the door. He kept his shoes beside the bed. Back in the village there was no danger. Still, his body did not understand. One evening, an old friend invited him to sit beside the river. The friend brought bread and fruit. They ate quietly. When darkness came, the soldier heard a branch crack and stood immediately. The friend did not laugh. He only said, "Your body is still protecting a place you have already left." The soldier sat down again. For many months, he returned to the river. At first, every sound disturbed him. Later, some sounds passed without pulling him to his feet. He did not force himself to relax. He allowed the body to learn slowly that it was on another shore. You may also be carrying a body that is protecting an old place. This is not your fault. The body remembers in its own language. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, a mind that prepares for problems when the room is quiet, a difficulty receiving kindness, the need to remain useful. These are not signs that you are broken. They may be pieces of a raft. Perhaps tonight you can place one corner of the raft on the ground. You do not have to leave it forever. Simply notice that in this moment, you are not crossing the old river. The bed is beneath you. The room is here. The breath is here. You can allow the body to learn one safe moment. Not all of life, only this moment. This is enough. What remains when the raft is set down? The one who crossed, you. Not the fear, not the vigilance, not the strategy. The living being those strategies carried. You were never the raft. You were the one trying to come home. Take a moment to feel this. Perhaps the body does not yet believe it is home. That is all right. Do not argue with it. Offer it the simple evidence of now, the weight beneath you, the air touching the skin, the next soft exhale. No danger needs to be imagined. No future needs to be prepared. For these few breaths, the river is behind you. A monk once asked his teacher, "What remains after all desires have ended?" The teacher was sweeping the courtyard. He continued sweeping. The monk waited. Finally, the teacher said, "The courtyard." The monk was disappointed. He had expected a grand answer. Enlightenment, emptiness, pure awareness. The teacher pointed toward the stones. When the leaves are gone, the stones remain. When the stones are gone, the earth remains. When the earth changes, change remains. Why are you searching for something that cannot fall away? The monk did not understand, so the teacher handed him the broom. For years, the monk carried the question. He studied. He meditated. He listened to many teachings. Then one morning, while sweeping the same courtyard, he noticed sunlight appearing between the branches. A bird landed on the wall. His hands were moving. His breath was moving. For a brief moment, he stopped asking what remained. There was only the courtyard. Perhaps the search for what remains can itself become another form of clinging. We want to find one final thing, something permanent, something loss cannot touch, a hidden jewel, an eternal identity, a guarantee. The mind says, "Tell me what cannot be taken, then I will place all my trust there." But Buddhist teaching gently questions the need for such certainty. What if peace does not come from finding a thing that never changes? What if peace comes from no longer demanding that life provide one? The courtyard changes. The light moves, the leaves fall, the stones wear down, the body changes. Thoughts come and go. There may be no object we can hold forever. And still, there is this moment, not permanent, not possessed, completely here. The sound that is present, the breath that is present, the awareness that is present. Perhaps what remains is not a thing. Perhaps it is the suchness of life. A traditional word, but a simple meaning. Things as they are, before we add our arguments. The leaf on the stone, the crack in the bowl, the empty room, the feeling in the chest, the breath entering and leaving. Not what should be, not what used to be, what is. The mind often believes peace will arrive when what is becomes what should be, when the loss is reversed, when the uncertainty ends, when the body improves, when the apology comes, when the future is secure. But peace sometimes arrives earlier. It arrives when the argument pauses. This is here. I do not have to like it. I do not have to call it good. I can stop fighting its existence for one breath. Acceptance is another word that can sound demanding. It may seem to mean approval, but acceptance is not saying, "This should have happened." It is saying, "This is what I am meeting now." The rain is falling, the wall is broken, the bowl is cracked. I am tired, the heart is grieving. This is the courtyard. And once we are standing in the actual courtyard, rather than the courtyard we believe should exist, we can breathe. We can see the stones. We can notice the bird on the wall. We can sweep one small area. You may not be able to accept the whole of your life tonight. No one is asking you to. Perhaps you can accept this breath. It is already here. Perhaps you can accept the weight of the blanket, the temperature of the room, the fact that a thought is present. Not forever, only now. This is not surrender in the sense of giving up. It is giving up the impossible task of making this moment not be this moment. And that task is very tiring. You have carried it long enough for today. Let the courtyard be the courtyard. Let the night be the night. Let yourself be tired. Nothing more is required. There was once a father who took his young daughter to see the sea for the first time. The child stood at the edge of the water and watched the waves arrive. Each time the water slid back, she became upset. "Make it stay," she told her father. He explained that the wave had to return. She did not accept this. She built a small wall of sand. The next wave crossed it. She dug a pool and tried to keep the water inside. The water sank into the sand. Finally, the father sat beside her. He placed his hand in the shallow water as it came and went. "Can you feel it while it is here?" he asked. The child placed her hand beside his. A wave arrived. The water was cool. Then it left. Another wave came. After a while, the child stopped trying to keep one wave. She began waiting for the next. This is such a small story, yet much of our suffering lives within the words, "Make it stay." Make the feeling stay. Make the person stay. Make the body stay young. Make the good season stay. Make certainty stay. Make me stay as I am. The sea cannot answer this request. Neither can life. But life continues offering waves. Not the same wave. Never the same wave. Still water. Still coolness. Still the meeting of hand and sea. We may spend so much energy grieving the wave that left that we do not feel the wave touching us now. This does not mean we should forget the first wave. It means the heart can learn a new movement, not grasping, receiving, not make it stay. Thank you for being here. This is the heart of non-attachment. To receive without demanding permanence. To love without ownership. To participate without believing we control the tide. This way of living does not protect us from sorrow. The father and child will both lose things they love, but it may protect the heart from becoming closed. When we try to keep every wave, we become exhausted. When we refuse to touch the sea because the water leaves, we become lonely. The open hand feels the wave. It also allows the wave to return. Perhaps there is something beautiful in your life now that you are already afraid of losing. A person sleeping nearby, a period of relative calm, a pet growing older, a body that still carries you, a parent's voice, a familiar neighborhood. Fear may be standing beside love. This is common. Love makes us aware of impermanence. But perhaps fear does not have to consume the moment. You might quietly say, "This is here now. Let me feel it while it is here." Not clutch it. Feel it. The warmth, the sound, the simple presence. And perhaps there is something that has already left. You may feel only the water moving away. Then let yourself feel that too. The sea is not punishing you. The tide is not personal. Life is moving as life moves. The heart may ache, and another wave will come, though it may not be the wave you want. It may be a friend's kindness, a morning bird, a moment when you notice you have gone an hour without remembering the pain, a warm cup held between both hands, a new understanding, a quiet sleep, small waves, real waves. You do not need to stand waiting for them. Rest on the shore. The sea knows how to arrive. As we move deeper into the night, the teachings begin to gather around one another. The leaf falling from the tree, the garden beneath the flood, the bowl becoming a lamp, the boat becoming a bench, the wall opening to sunlight, the raft set down on the far shore, the waves arriving and returning. Each points toward the same quiet truth. Forms fall away. Life continues. Not always in the way we wanted, not always quickly, not without sorrow. But the ending of a form is not the ending of everything. And when all forms seem uncertain, there is still the possibility of meeting this moment without resistance. There is still awareness. There is still the breath. There is still the simple capacity to be present. There is one final story. In a small village near the mountains, there lived a baker. He woke before dawn each morning. He lit the oven. He mixed flour, water, salt, and a small piece of yesterday's dough. For many years, he followed the same rhythm. Then his wife became ill. The baker stopped working for a time, so he could care for her. Neighbors brought food. The oven remained cold. Months passed. His wife died during the winter. Afterward, the baker could not return to the kitchen. Every object reminded him of her. She had folded the cloths. She had painted the wooden sign above the door. She had always tasted the first loaf. The baker sat alone in the dark bakery. People in the village told him they missed his bread. He heard only pressure in their words. He thought they wanted him to become the person he had been before, but that person had fallen away. One morning, a child knocked on the door. Her family had little food. She asked whether he had any old bread. The baker found a small bag of flour. Without thinking much, he lit the oven. He made one loaf. The process felt both familiar and strange. His hands remembered. The room warmed. When the bread was ready, he gave it to the child. She tore off a piece and ate it immediately. The baker almost told her to wait until it cooled. His wife would have said the same. He heard her voice in his memory and smiled. Then he cried. The child waited quietly. The next morning, the baker made 2 loaves, one for the child's family, one for himself. He did not reopen the bakery, not yet. He did not return to the old rhythm. He simply made bread when he could. Eventually, neighbors began leaving small bags of flour at his door. Sometimes he baked, sometimes he did not. Years later, the bakery opened again, but it was different. There were fewer loaves. The wooden sign had faded. The baker worked slowly. A chair remained beside the oven where his wife had once sat. No one used it, yet the chair did not make the room empty. It made the room honest. The baker had lost the life he knew. What remained? At first, only flour, water, salt, hands that remembered, a child at the door, one loaf. Often, what remains does not look like enough. We search for a complete life and find only ingredients. We want certainty and find one next action. We want the person back and find only a memory of what they would have said. We want our old strength and find enough energy to wash one cup. We want meaning and find someone who needs bread. But perhaps one loaf is enough for one morning. Perhaps one breath is enough for this moment. Perhaps peace does not arrive as the restoration of everything. Perhaps it arrives as intimacy with what remains. Flour, water, salt, hands. The baker did not stop grieving. The empty chair remained, but grief no longer meant that life had ended. Grief became one part of the room. Warmth was also there. Bread was also there. A child's hunger. A neighbor's kindness. The memory of a voice. The glow of the oven before dawn. All of it together. This is the whole teaching. Not that nothing is lost. Much is lost. Not that change is easy. Often it is not. Not that every ending becomes something better. Some endings simply leave us changed. The teaching is that life is not reduced to what has fallen away. There is always more in the room than the empty chair. There is always more in you than the role that ended. There is always more in awareness than the thought currently passing through it. And even when you cannot feel this more, the breath continues quietly. The body continues receiving the support beneath it. The earth continues holding what falls. You do not need a grand answer to the question of what remains. Perhaps the answer is small. This breath remains. Then this one. The ability to feel remains. The capacity to care remains. The possibility of kindness remains. The open sky remains behind the weather. The courtyard remains beneath the leaves. The earth remains beneath the garden. And when even these images fall away, there is simply this moment. No need to name it. No need to keep it. Only this. Perhaps you have spent much of your life trying to become someone who could not be shaken, someone strong enough that nothing would fall. But peace may not come from becoming unshakable. Trees move in the wind. Water changes shape. A living heart is affected by life. Peace may come from learning that being shaken is not the same as being destroyed. You have changed before. You have lost before. You have crossed rivers you did not choose. And though you may not have crossed them gracefully, you crossed. You are here, perhaps tired, perhaps carrying too much, perhaps uncertain about who you are, without what has ended. Still here, not as proof of strength, simply as life continuing. There is tenderness in this. You do not need to turn survival into an achievement. You can let it be enough that you have arrived at this night. Let the baker make one loaf. Let the gardener touch one green shoot. Let the student light one candle inside the broken bowl. Let the traveler carry one burning branch until the moon appears. Small things, enough things. We have walked a long way together, past the fallen leaf in the courtyard, past the flooded garden and the crooked pear tree, past the old boat resting as a bench beside a house, past the broken wall and the flowers growing in the new light, to past the river where the heavy pack became lighter, past the lamps extinguished by the wind, past the house whose door was opened again, past the child placing her hand in the waves, past the bakery warming slowly before dawn. You do not have to remember these stories. You do not have to understand the teaching. Perhaps the mind has already wandered. Perhaps some words passed by without being heard. That is perfectly all right. Nothing has been missed. The night does not require attention. Sleep does not require wisdom. You do not have to become less attached before you are allowed to rest. You do not have to release everything. Letting go may happen by itself when the hands become tired. For now, allow them to rest. Whatever you have been holding can remain nearby. You do not need to throw it away. You do not need to carry it into sleep. Place it beside the bed in your imagination. The memory, the plan, the regret, the unanswered question, the identity you are afraid of losing, the future you are trying to secure. Set them down gently. They will not be offended. They can wait until morning, and perhaps when morning comes, you will pick some of them up again. That is all right. Letting go is not a single act completed forever. It is a small softening. Again and again. The breath arrives. The breath leaves. The hand closes. The hand opens. The leaf grows. The leaf falls. The tree remains for a while. Then the tree too returns to the earth. Nothing held forever. Nothing outside belonging. Everything participating in the same movement. You are part of this movement. Not separate. Not failing. Not late. You are not required to stand outside life and control its changing. You may be changed by it. You may be carried. You may rest. Feel the surface beneath you. It knows how to hold weight. Let the back be supported. Let the legs be heavy. Let the muscles around the eyes soften. There is no need to watch the doorway. No need to protect the lamps. No need to keep the waves from leaving. The darkness is gentle now. The room is enough. The breath is enough. You are enough without the things you have lost. You are enough without proving what you can rebuild. You are enough in the unfinished space between one form and another. What remains when everything falls away? Perhaps no final answer is needed. Perhaps the question itself can fall away. And what remains then is quiet. The quiet beneath thought. The quiet inside the pause after the exhale. The quiet of the tree after the leaf has landed. The quiet of the bowl holding a small flame. The quiet of the open hand. Rest there. Nothing to fix. Nothing to protect. Nothing to become before morning. Let the day be finished. Let the old forms return to the earth. Let the new forms remain unseen. You do not need to meet them yet. For now, only warmth, only weight, only breath. The next breath may be softer. The next thought may drift farther away. The body knows the path towards sleep, even when the mind does not. Allow yourself to be carried, like a leaf settling onto wet stones, like a boat resting at the shore, like a lamp becoming dim at the end of evening. There is nothing more you need to hear, nothing more you need to hold. The night is here, you are here, and for this moment, that is everything. Sleep well.